Mirabelle, that was her name. It had taken him almost a month, but he had figured it out. He could have easily called his best friend, Roland, who worked as a private detective, to look into her, but he did not want it to seem like he was an actual stalker, and so he had decided not to do anything extreme. He had heard the Scottish-looking librarian call her by her name the day before. He was getting a bit desperate to talk to her. It was already 2 days before Christmas and festivities were going on everywhere. Everything seemed to be either red, white or green. All the stores seemed to be playing some sort of Christmas carol. The smell of Christmas seemed to be in the air. The fact that it was already Christmas just reminded him that he would soon return home, that his time in New York would soon be over, that the chance that he would have to talk to Mirabelle was almost gone. He had woken up that morning with the intention of talking to Mirabelle, with the intention of hearing her beautiful voice being directed to him. It was his last chance, as the library would only be open that day before it was closed for the holidays. An unfamiliar feeling of nervousness clouded his mind as he dressed for that day. He put on his casual white polo with a pair of washed jeans. It seemed as though he was preparing for his first business presentation, only like 10 times worse. "You will be fine, it could not go to bad," he tried to console himself. That morning, he ate minimally as the entire scene kept playing over and over in his head, with him imagining several ways in which it could go. He was usually one who prided himself with confidence, but all of that seemed to fly out the window with Mirabelle. He spent extra time with his appearance, as he had no idea what she liked. He only hoped that he would be good enough for her. His intention was that he wanted to talk to her. He hoped things would go faster from that point. He took a cab to the library, all in hopes to meet her there. He was not disappointed, because she came in a thick coat, not too long after she sat down. He openly gawked at her as she chatted with the librarian, smiling and laughing with the red head before she went to sit. Jaden sat down and started rethinking his plan. He had planned on talking to her when she was leaving the library, but he was not sure if he could wait that long. Then again, there was no way they could have a serious conversation in the library. He made the first move by standing up and moving closer to her, taking the seat that was beside her. For the first time since he had been admiring her from afar, he let her see his face. He saw surprise flicker through her expression as she looked up at him. Her beauty up close was almost startling. He almost fell, really. The fact that she was so close made his heart start pounding faster, and he felt that if he did not say anything, he would faint. "Hi," he whispered as he sat down, catching a whiff of her cool scent. She smelled in winter. "Hi," she replied, her voice low and angelic, before she returned her focus on the book she was reading. He was confused about what to say next, as she was just focused on her book, and it seemed like he was distracting her. "My name is Jaden, and you are?" he asked, and she turned to him, one of her eyebrows cocked as though saying, "Seriously?" "My name is Mirabelle, and I am trying to read," she said. It sounded a bit defensive from her, and he would not lie that it did not hurt that she did not want to talk to him. But he covered it up with a forced laugh. He then stood up and went to the next chair, so as not to distract her from reading, and then took out a book of his own and forced himself to write, all the while scolding himself for not waiting for her to leave the library. He sat on the chair, just pretending to read a book, while waiting for her to leave. It actually seemed that she did not plan on leaving, as she knew that he wanted to talk to her. She sat in the library for what seemed like 4 hours, before she began to make herself feel comfortable by propping her legs up. It was then that he knew she had no intentions of leaving. He was already getting tired of waiting for her to be done, when his phone rang. He rolled his eyes annoyed, as his first thought went to his sister, who would be calling to tell him to come home. He was actually surprised to see that it was his best friend Greg that was calling him. He immediately went outside to take the call, walking to the side of the library. "Hello, Greg," he said into the phone. "Jay, it has been so long," his friend replied. It was true. Jaden had been so busy with work and all that he barely had time for his buddies. Yes. It has been really stressful," he said. "I called your office and your sister said you were on leave," Greg said. "Yes, I am in New York now," he confirmed. "Really? I'm actually in New York for the holidays with Pauline and the kids. I would love to catch up," Greg said. Jaden smiled at the thought of catching up with Greg. The both of them had met in college, and girls had loved Greg due to his buff look. He would have never guessed that he would be the first to settle down. He had seemed to rough around the edges for that, but that didn't seem to be a problem. His wife of 3 years, Pauline, was the nicest and one of the smallest women he had ever met, but she seemed to have Greg under her thumb. "I would like to catch up too," he said. As he looked back to the library door, he saw Mirabelle's back as she retreated from the library. "I will call you back later," he said to Greg before quickly disconnecting the call and running after Mirabelle. It did not take much time for him to catch up with her as she was walking a bit slowly, being pregnant and all. "Mirabelle!" he shouted as he got close to her. She turned abruptly, her eyes wide with fear, until she realized it was him. Her face relaxed considerably. "Yes," she said. The fear on her face had morphed into a look of annoyance. "I wanted to talk to you," he said as he moved closer to her. "Well then, talk." She sounded so abrasive, and he was wondering why someone who seemed so calm would be so prickly. "I wanted to ask for your number, so that we could get to talk to each other, know each other," he basically spat out. She looked at him like he was crazy, and he half expected her to mention the pregnancy, or that she was already with someone, but she didn't. That gave him hope that he still had a chance with her. "Please just cut to the chase. What exactly do you want from me?" "Stop beating around the bush," she said, her voice hard to show how serious she was. Well, if it was honesty she wanted, he would give her honesty. "I have been watching you for a while now, and I really like you. I don't know if you have anyone in your life right now, but I want a relationship with you," he said bluntly, and a look of sadness crossed her expression for a moment. "This is nice and flattering and all, but I am not ready for a relationship now, and I think I will be ready anytime soon. I am trying to focus on myself right now, and the timing could not be more wrong. Please do not pressure me," she said to him, giving him a sad smile, and Jaden's heart felt like it sank. He had no idea what to do. He wanted to beg her to reconsider, or tell her that he would wait, but he did none of those. He just nodded his head and turned back, starting to walk in the opposite direction. He had experienced a heartbreak before, but he had never been rejected, not so outrightly and nicely. He knew that he looked good enough. He knew that his light brown hair and bright blue eyes, which seemed green under certain lights, got women all around him. He knew that the fact that he was the head of a multi-million company that had connections all over the world had women falling over his feet. He didn't know why she rejected him. His first girlfriend had cheated on him. Frankly, he did not blame her, as he did not give her attention, and she was more like a doll to him. At times it had hurt, but the hurt could even compare to the pain he was feeling, just because she told him no. He knew that she may not have realized it, but she had ruined Christmas for him. Mirabelle was feeling guilty. Her conscience was beating her up for being so rude to the man who has asked her out. When he had sat close to her, she was startled. He reminded her of Charlie, her ex-boyfriend, the only man she loved. They had the same color of hair and the same shade of skin. The only difference was the color of their eyes, where Charlie had brown eyes. Jaden's were a different shade entirely, such a starting blue that reminded her of the ocean or the skies. Fear had immediately entered into her. She had thought she was seeing a ghost, but there was no way. Charlie was dead, and it seemed that he was coming back to haunt her. But she heard his voice. Her mind had calmed down. He sounded nothing like Charlie, but there was no way she would keep looking over her shoulder. The reminder of Charlie's death had already changed her mood, and she told him that she would love to read. She pretended to focus on the book, but she was looking at him. The more she looked at him, the more she could see how mistaken she was. He really looked nothing like Charlie. They only shared the same color of skin and hair. More than once it crossed her mind that she was hallucinating. It was almost a year since the incident had occurred, the one that had almost taken her life. She reasoned that maybe that was why I was seeing things. She was so tired and tried to read, but Charlie's dead body kept flashing through her vision, lifeless and pale on the floor of his apartment. The autopsy had showed that he had committed suicide, and for months she had blamed herself. It was New Year's Eve, and she went out to drink. She had run into a ditch, and she had almost lost her legs. Everything about the accident was a blur to her. Her therapist said her mind was removing the memories because of trauma. The first months were worse as she was grieving and at the same time struggling with physical pain. She had not been able to tell her parents, not until 6 or so months later. No one had known that their relationship was so serious, not his parents and not hers. She was simply the girl that discovered his body. She had not told her sister, as she did not want to spoil her bliss, and she had quit medical school, as she did not see the need. She was being trained to save people, but she could not save the one that she truly loved. For that reason she had decided to carry her sister's baby. She wanted to give back to nature. When she was tired of reading, she stood up from the chair. It was a plus that Jaden had previously gone out to take a cow. She walked home with all intentions of fixing a meeting with her therapist. She was only a few blocks gone when she heard her name. She turned back, fear in her bones, her mind flying and thinking it was a ghost. She was relieved when she saw that it was just Jaden. She was still wondering what the pretty man wanted with her. She did not want anything to do with him. She asked him, and there and then he began to ask her out. Cranky and annoyed, she had immediately told him of hoping that he did not prod her. The look of sadness that appeared on his face made her regret her actions, and as he walked away from her, her heart cried for him, and she wanted to call him name and give him a hug, but she sealed her lips and watched him with a heavy heart as she left. She has a bad feeling that she had just ruined someone's Christmas. It has been almost 2 years, Mirabelle. You have to move on with your life. Her mother shouted at her, and Mirabelle cringed at the sharp noise that reverberated against the walls of her almost empty house. A whole year had passed since she saw Jaden, her so-called admirer. Christmas had gone, and so had the new year. And with each after Christmas she grew bigger and bigger, and even more cranky. In February, and at 7 months, she went through the most painful and yet the most beautiful process in life. She gave birth to the twins. She had to do a C-section, but nevertheless she felt like a mother. She had felt a rush of emotions that day, from love flowing through her veins to sadness that she had to give the children to their biological parents. She had a boy and a girl. Her niece and nephew were the most beautiful creatures that she had seen. At about 6 months into the pregnancy, she had been skeptical about giving the children back to her sister, as they felt like part of her, but she had come to realize that they were her sister's children. At birth, her sister and her husband had cried out of joy. It was the look of joy on their faces that made her realize that the children were not really hers, that Bella and Richard were the true parents. Adrian and Alexia were the carbon copies of their parents, with Bella's brown eyes, Richard's nose and everything else. It almost felt weird that children that looked nothing like her came out of her. After the birth, she had decided to leave her sister's house and move into an apartment of her own. Everyone had expected that after a while she would go back to medical school. She had defied all odds and had not returned. It was why her mother was screaming at her. "I have moved on with my life, Mom," she said to her mother. The answer did not seem to placate her mother, as she looked even more annoyed. "Well, at least do something. All you do these days is sit around in this terrible-looking apartment of yours and read. At least put all that reading into use," her mother said. Deep down inside Mirabelle, she knew that her mother was right, and she had to do something, but at that moment she was content in just reading. Her love for novels had retained even after the pregnancy. It had stuck like glue to her. After reading Mother of One then, she read more and more, researching and reading. To her, all that research was in plan for something. She truly did plan on finishing medical school, but she did not feel the time was right. At first it was because her C-section scar was not healing, and then it was because she was still grieving, but then she was just being lazy to continue. "I will continue, Mom, maybe in the new year," she said, hoping that it would make her mother leave her alone at least for a week. "Really?" her mother asked, her eyes shining with happiness. "Yes. What made you change your mind?" her mother asked, her voice much lower than the high pitch she started with. Truly, Mirabelle didn't know when she changed her mind, or if she had even changed her mind. But she felt it had been the book for her. It had given her a reason to be a doctor, to help sick people all over the world. It had become sort of a mission for her. "I don't know, Mom. Maybe it was purpose for me," she said to her mother. Her mother seemed satisfied with her response, and so she nodded her head. "Okay, you said next year, right?" her mother asked to be sure, and Mirabelle cringed. She had no idea if she would really be able to step into a hospital in the new year. It had been so long, but she nodded her head. "Well, if you say so, then I will be going to my friend's place for dinner," her mother said, before picking up her nude purse from the glass table and walking out of Mirabelle's small apartment, her nude flat slapping against the ground. When her mother was gone, Mirabelle sat down and wondered how on earth she was going back to medical school in less than a month. "You have to come back for Christmas this year," Craig said to Jaden over the phone. It was almost Christmas again, and a whole year had passed since he last went to New York. After Mirabelle rejected him, he had decided to take his friend up on his offer and had visited Greg, his wife and their growing family for Christmas. The entire experience was one that he greatly enjoyed. He had seen his best friend in family mode, changing his son's diaper and all. Momentarily, he had forgotten all about Mirabelle and his broken heart. He channeled all his love into caring for Greg's son Liam. The little 6-month was fascinating, and he enjoyed watching him trying to crawl around the house, passing his dimpled thumb past his pink lips. He enjoyed watching how the infant's eyes would shine with wonder as they put up the Christmas tree, and how the most angelic laughter would bubble up his throat. All in all, his Christmas was good. He did, however, feel a bit of an ache in his heart when Greg and his wife would exchange a heated kiss, or when his friend would whisper sweet nothings into the ears of his wife, and a slow blush would rise up her cheeks. He enjoyed the trip, but he felt like a third wheel when they kissed on New Year's Day, and was the designated babysitter when they went out for dinner. "I don't think I can, Greg. There is a lot I have to get done in the office, and I was quite the third wheel last year," he told his friend, hoping that Greg would take the hint. "Bro, it has been 1 whole year since we have seen each other. There will still be work when you come back, and you have subordinates for a reason. Besides, Pauline is asking a friend of hers to come for Christmas. You guys can hook up," Greg said, and Jaden sighed. It seemed that his friend had solutions to all his excuses and wanted him to come for Christmas. "Okay, I will think about it," Jaden told Greg. No, don't say you will think about it. Say you will come," Greg insisted. Okay, I will be there, but just for a week," Jaden said. "Fine, for a week," Greg agreed. They talked generally about other things before Jaden disconnected the call. "Irene," he shouted into the phone. "Yes, Jaden," his sister and secretary answered. "Book me a flight. I am going to New York for Christmas," he said, and disconnected the call before his sister could even reply. "Hi, Pauline," Mirabelle said as she picked up the phone. She was still brainstorming on what she would do about medical school. "Mirabelle, hi. How are you these days?" Pauline asked. Pauline was one of the people that Mirabelle had met in high school, and they had continued to keep in touch, just talking once in a while. "I am good. How is your husband and the baby?" she asked her longtime friend. "Oh, Liam and Greg are fine. I was thinking, do you have any plans for Christmas?" Pauline asked, and Mirabelle was shocked. She had not expected that, and certainly not so suddenly. "Well, no, not really," she said, confused as to whether it was a question or not, and Pauline let out a laugh that released her tension. "I am sorry that I was so forward. It is just that it has been so long since we saw each other, and I have been meaning to ask if we could meet up before Christmas. Would not be a bad idea, right?" Pauline asked, and Mirabelle nodded her head before she remembered that Pauline could not see her. "It is a nice idea. It has been such a long time we saw, since the birth of Liam actually. It should be 18 months now," Miranda said. Yes, it has been long. I will be expecting you," Pauline said, her voice full of excitement, sounding so giddy, and Mirabelle could not help but suspect that there was an underlying motive. "Oh well, at least now I have plans," she thought to herself. After Mirabelle disconnected the call, she began to search for what she would wear to the dinner. Thoughts of her mother and medical school were far from her mind, and all she looked forward to was actually going out of the house. It seemed as though time flew with the speed of light, as before Mirabelle knew it. It was the morning of the dinner. She woke up that morning feeling very happy, just like bubbles were underneath her skin. She had a feeling that she would have a very good day. She took her bath, ate her breakfast feeling very happy, dancing jingle bells and all. By noon, she began to get dressed. She picked up the cream figure-hugging dress that her sister had helped her pick out, paired it with red peep-toe stiletto heels. She did as much makeup she could do, which was actually not much at all, and managed to tame her hair, which seemed like the only thing she could do stylishly. When she was done, she looked and felt beautiful. She put on a red coat, which complemented her dressing, and hired a car to take her to her Pauline's house. The traffic was high, and it took hours before she could get to her destination. She was a bit frustrated and quite antsy when she rang the doorbell, and she did not expect the face that she saw on the other end. Jaden stared into the eyes of the woman that had been on his mind for more than a year. He blinked his eyes rapidly, hoping that the illusion would clear, but that did not seem to be the case. Mirabelle was standing in front of him, in full flesh. "Mirabelle," he whispered, careful not to shout her name too loud, not be labeled as mad or anything. "Jaden," she whispered back, a look of surprise equally on her face. She rubbed her arms, and that was when he realized that he left her standing outside in the cold. "Please come in, he said, letting her in. "Am I at the wrong house?" she asked, confused. And he realized that it was actually possible that she got lost, or maybe she was the friend that Pauline was expecting. "You are here to see Pauline, aren't you?" he asked, and she nodded her head, though she still looked confused. "Well, she is inside," he said, stepping aside from the door so that she could enter. He could basically see the wheels turning in her head. Wheels were turning in his head too. She took off her coat as she entered the house, and Jaden's mouth immediately hung open. All the times he had seen her, she was usually on a coat. It was the first time he had seen how she looked underneath. The white dress she wore sculpted her magnificent body, enhancing all the crests and curves. It blended well with her caramel-colored skin and made her red lipstick pop. Her stomach was no longer swollen with pregnancy, but she still glowed. Her full natural hair was designed in an exquisite style atop her head. She looked beautiful. "Oh, Mirabelle, Merry Christmas in advance," Pauline exclaimed as she came into the lobby. It was her voice that brought him out of his trance. "Merry Christmas to you too. It has been so long, Pauline," Mirabelle said as they hugged. It was slightly awkward to say the least, with Mirabelle looking even more taller than Pauline with her heels. He stared at both of them as they chatted and laughed like old friends. He was still confused as to what was going on. What were the odds of them meeting again? Or was it planned? He wondered to himself. As Mirabelle and Pauline went into the house without even talking to him, he became angry. He wondered how she could act like she did not know him after breaking his heart. He shrugged off his thoughts and walked into the dining room. He had arrived at Greg's place almost 3 days back, and he was shocked by what he saw. In the back of his mind, he had expected Liam to still be the same baby he had left behind, and so he was shocked to see a chubby baby basically running around the house. Greg and Pauline's child had grown to be very active and a handful, not wanting to sit down. Ironically, when he saw Liam, his mind went back to Mirabelle's child. He wondered if the child would already be crawling or walking. "We were about to start dinner," Pauline said to Mirabelle as they sat down. Jaden could not help but glare at her and how normal she looked. "What is wrong?" Greg asked him, halfway through the dinner. His friend had most probably noticed how he was glaring at her. "Nothing," he muttered and continued stabbing his food with his fork. "So are you thinking of going back to medical school?" Pauline asked Mirabelle, and Jaden took all of his attention to her. It was not as though his attention left her in the first place. "Well, I am thinking about going back next year," she said, not even sounding sure of herself. He had not known that she was a medical student. From the books that she read, he figured that she would in the humanities. She looked young enough to still be in college. He imagined that she would be a very good-looking doctor, one that would smile and bring patients out of the dead. "So how is your baby?" he asked out of the blue. He had been wanting to say something to her, but he had been out of words. He did not know much about her. His question seemed to throw her off as she looked like a deer caught in the headlights. "Baby?" Pauline asked. It was then it occurred to him that Pauline may not know about the baby. "Do you two know each other?" Greg asked at the same time. The dinner had just become much more exciting than she had expected. "Well, we met last year. We read in the same library," Jaden said offhandedly. "More like you were stalking me." Mirabelle threw back. She seemed angered by the baby comment. "Stalking?" Pauline exclaimed, giving Jaden a threatening look. "Well, not exactly," he said, trying to defend himself. "Then what?" Pauline asked. "Okay, this it," he said, and told them the entire story, deliberately leaving out the stalking part. "She was pregnant, I swear," he said. "I was," she replied, and then it occurred to him that her baby could have died, and he was just reminding her of the past. Though he had been slightly obsessed with her, he managed to search for her during the entire year they were apart. He actually managed to move on. "I was carrying the baby for my sister," she said simply. It took a few minutes for Jaden to understand what she was talking about, but his respect for her grew. Apart from beauty and obvious brains, she was also very compassionate. He could count how many people could do that for their sibling. "Wow," Pauline said. Jaden was equally dumbfounded. He kept quiet and did not say anything else until the end of the dinner. He just kept beating himself up internally for running his mouth. "I am sorry," he said to her as she was about to leave. His conscience was still eating at him. He was so angry that she had broken his heart that he forgot how she had done it. "For what? I should be sorry. I was actually very rude the first time we met," Mirabelle admitted. Both Pauline and Greg had excused them to talk to each other. "So, we are friends?" he asked, hoping that she would at least take his offer of friendship. "Friends," she said, stretching her hand to his. As his hand touched her soft ones, a trickle shot down his spine. He had a feeling that they would be much more than friends. Mirabelle was attracted to Jaden. That was something she could not deny. The night after the Christmas dinner, she had called Pauline and asked for his number. Though they had called a truce that night, something in her compelled her to talk to him. It had taken her a while to come to that conclusion actually. At first, she was trying to convince herself that she was only attracted to him because he resembled Charlie. But if she was being frank to herself, the only resemblance they had was the similarity in their color of skin and hair. When they had talked on the phone the next day, she had realized how beautiful his voice sounded, how it was low and gave her tremors. She had realized how he was not just a pretty boy, but he had so much on his mind. He was so very open with her, and she could hear pure passion in his voice as he talked about the company he ran. She could hear pain in his voice as he talked about his dead father, and love in his voice when he talked about his sister. In just days, she felt like she had known him for years. In just hours, she became wholly attracted to his mind. She had discovered that they shared their love for books. When she was talking to him, she did not feel like she had to worry about medical school, or her mother or anything. Him being so open to her prompted her to equally be open to him. She told him how she was still slightly scared of going back to medical school, how she felt when she carried her sister's babies, and sent him pictures of her nephew and niece. She mused all about their very short period of talking as she got ready for their first date. From the moment that they shook hands, she knew very well that they would be anything but friends. That friendship was not for them. She also knew that after the rejection of the previous time, it would be hard for him to ask her out. And so she did. She asked him out for a date. She had called him that night, her hands shaking in fear and anticipation as she dialed his number. He had replied in his usual manner, a light tone with a hint of seriousness. She managed to talk light-handedly for a few minutes before she blurted out that they should date. She had half expected to start laughing at her, but he just said, "Yes, we probably should." It had said so in such a manner that she could not help the laughter that bubbled up her chest. Out of her earlier apprehension, that flew through the air. "We should do it," she said, sounding enthusiastic and even nodding her head. It was not until she disconnected the call that she realized the gravity of what she did. She was going for a date. She had been so nervous that she immediately called her sister, who was pretty busy with the children. But Bella immediately came to her rescue, and they went clothes shopping. It was already the 23rd and everyone seemed to be doing their last-minute Christmas shopping. She had the time of her life with Bella, and she ended up picking a nude-colored dress that almost blended with her skin. At first, she had been a bit shy to put on the dress, as it stuck like a second skin, but her sister had persuaded her, and so she finally took the dress. She was very much glad of her choice, as she looked at herself in the mirror. The dress accentuated all her curves and made her look so glamorous. She almost hated that she had to wear a coat over it. As she got ready, she felt very much inclined to look her best, and she spent extra time on her makeup and all. By the time Jaden rang her doorbell, she was ready and very much nervous. "Hi," she said awkwardly, while gawking at his magnificence really. He had looked all casual at the dinner in Pauline's house, and so she had never seen him corporate wear. He looked dashing in his two-piece black suit, with a white office shirt underneath and a red tie. His little beard had been completely shaved off and his light blonde hair was arranged in a stylish manner. His blue eyes seemed like they were shining with happiness. He wore a gray coat over the suit, but it was open enough for her to see what lay underneath. All in all, he looked like he belonged on the cover of a magazine and not standing in front of the house, and not at all wanting to take her out. "Are you not going to ask me in?" he asked after a while, and Mirabelle almost face-palmed herself. She had been gawking at him for so long that she did not even realize that he would be cold. Come in," she said, hoping that her nervousness did not show on her face. Jaden gave her a look that made her feel edible. It was as though he was boring into her soul, and she was usually not someone used to that type of attention. It felt so good. "You look beautiful," he said, after clearing his throat and handing her a bottle of wine. A bit desperate to leave the tense and sexually ignited atmosphere, she excused herself to keep the wine in the pantry. "Make yourself comfortable," she said to Jaden. As she was about to leave, he took off his gray coat, and her tongue basically froze in her mouth. He was wearing a skin-tight suit that even accentuated his muscles. She was already having fantasies of those arms wrapped around her. She stood there again gawking at him, tightening to her hold on the wine. I should probably keep this," she said awkwardly as he caught her looking at him. "How did I not know that he was this hot?" she asked herself as she got a bit of privacy, fanning herself with her hand and rubbing her thighs together. She had no plans for getting sexually frustrated without even going out first. She did a series of breathing exercises to make herself seem stable before checking her makeup in the mirror and ensuring that she did not look as sexually frustrated as she was. "We should get going," he said as she got back to the living room. She was surprised that he didn't want to stay in her house any longer. "Is anything wrong?" she asked him, concern itching at her chest. "No, not really. It is just that I booked a reservation and I do not want us to be late," he said as he stood up and put on his coat, extending his arm to her. Mirabelle could not help the smile that fell to her lips. She felt so eternally blessed, and the date had not even started. "So, where are you taking me?" she asked as they settled in the car. She had only proposed the date, not planned it. She had no idea where they were going out, and he said to dress formally. "Your favorite place," he said. She was half lost. She had no idea what favorite place he was talking about, or the one he would take her to. "Come on, tell me where," she asked. The curiosity was killing her, and the only thing that could revive her was the satisfaction. "We will get there soon enough, Mirabelle," he said, with her trying to get the venue of the date out of him. She kind of forgot the earlier awkwardness that she felt, and the sexual frustration was the furthest thing from her mind. Jaden drove and stopped them in front of what looked like a classy restaurant. She was impressed by the magnificence of the building and the architecture from the exterior, but what truly shocked her was the interior of the restaurant. It was filled with books. She could not help the wide smile that graced her lips as the smell of books trickled her nostrils. She was barely in control of herself as she threw herself over Jaden. "This is perfect," she said to him as her body was still very much attached to his. The smile that he gave back to her almost made her melt. "A bit too much for a first date?" he asked. No, perfect. I love it so much. It is the best place you could ever take me," she said, still very much attached to him, not minding that they were making a little scene. The joy of being beside books followed her as they went on with their date. She was so at ease as they talked about anything and everything. Their main topic was about books. She told him how she had always loved books. The smell, the look, the feel of paper on her fingertips, the sound of flipping pages, how words seemed to jump out of the paper, everything. He did admit that he was not as passionate about reading as she was, but he did love a good book. "I can totally teach you how to love books," she promised him. "Well, you can try," he teased. As they drank wine and drank overly priced pasta, they talked about annoying sisters, his younger sister and secretary, who was her age, and her own older sister. He asked more about how she acted as a surrogate for her sister, and she showed him pictures of Adrian and Alexia. They found out that they both loved dogs. She told how much she loved the medical practice, and how she had been confused lately on what her priorities were and how she would go back to medical school the upcoming year. He told her how it was to be running a multi-million company, and how much press coverage he got. "I am not actually very popular here, but thanks to my mother, every newborn baby in New York knows me," he said. She noticed that when he talked about his mother, he seemed angry with her. She did not want to probe, but she could see that they did not have the perfect relationship. "Mothers can be very annoying," she chipped in. "Mine has been forcing me to go back to medical school, as she is a doctor herself," she continued, trying to bring about a relation. "If you liked it so much, then why did you stop?" Jaden asked. She had sort of been expecting the question, but it was still caught off guard, as it was thrown at her. "I don't want to talk about it," she said and kept quiet, and for a few minutes the both of them did not say anything. "I am sorry, I should not have brought it up." Jaden apologized, and she shook her head. "It is not your fault," she insisted. "Okay, then. Can you tell me about that book you were reading at the library?" he asked. She knew that he was trying to change the subject, as he was not even subtle, but she took the bait and started talking about the book. "Oh, you have to read that book," she started. After they were done eating, having their dessert of chocolate cream cake, they went to the book side of the library to explore. She looked for the book she was reading at the library, but she did not see it, and so she picked a classic that they both read together. "So on a range of 1 to 10, how good was the date?" Jaden asked on the drive home. It was a very unusual question, and Mirabelle turned to him. "Did you not see me there? I said I loved the date. I loved everything about it," she said, wondering why he seemed as though he did not believe her. "So, we can go out another time?" he asked as he pulled over in front of her house. "Are you asking me on another date?" she teased. "Of course I am, just say yes." "Yes," she said, reaching over and placing a peck over his lips. She was about to withdraw as he held on to her waist, deepening the kiss, moving their lips together in sync, using his teeth to scrape on her bottom lip. Mirabelle was so lost in the kiss that he forgot that they were still in his car parked in front of her house. It was when her backside hit the steering wheel and the horn rang out that realization came to her, and it came with a shock. She hit her head on the car window with a resounding twat and her hip on the steering. Ouch! She cried out as she went back to her seat, rubbing on her sore forehead. Shit! I am so sorry, Jaden said, bending over this time to look at her. As he bent, she was so transfixed by his red lips and blue eyes that she momentarily forgot her pain. She just stared at him as he fussed over her head, creating several fantasies in her head. We should go inside, she proposed, and Jaden immediately agreed. Her house still looked the way she had left it. Welcome to my humble abode, she said as she took off her coat, together with Jaden. Do you care for a cup of coffee? She asked, and he frowned at her. Coffee can wait, for now let me see your head, he said, gesturing for her to sit down. You do know I am the medical student here, she reminded him. He did not even pay any hers to her as he took off his suit jacket and rolled up the sleeves of his shirt, giving her access to see his light skin with flecks of gold hair sprinkled on it. He just went into her house like he owned it and brought out a first aid kit. My head is fine, just a bit of ice is needed, she reminded him for the umpteenth time. Yet again, he did not listen to her as he disinfected the cotton wool and used it to clean the surface of her forehead. She could help the hiss of pain that passed through her lips. She had no idea that there was a breakage of skin. Sorry, he apologized again as he covered it with a band-aid and gave her a kiss on her forehead. Like the sexually frustrated minx that she was, she dragged him lower and pressed her lips to his. This is what got us here in the first place, he said against her lips. Well, I am not complaining, she countered and pressed her lips back on his. It was as though she released a beast as he switched their positions on the sofa, bringing her under him. Desperately, she pushed her hands underneath his shirt and ran her hands over his muscular chest, playing with his nipples. She cried out of frustration as he ran his hands around the sides of her breasts, her hips, but never where she wanted them. But when he finally gave her what she wanted, she cried out of ecstasy. Mirabelle was basking in the feeling of satisfaction and peace as she snuggled deeper into Jaden's warm body, blushing slightly as she felt something hard poking into her thigh. Looking up from where her face was pressed against his bare chest, she saw his shining blue eyes looking down at her. Merry Christmas, babe, Jaden said in his hoarse-sounding voice, and she almost melted. She pressed her face against his chest. She felt his chest vibrate as he let out a laugh. So now you're shy? He asked, looking down at her. It was ironic, really, given that they had seen every inch of each other the day before, and she was not shy. She did not really understand the morning after syndrome, but it seemed that she had caught it. I am not, she denied, and yet again he laughed at her. So, what are we going to do this Christmas morning? Jaden asked, and the first thing that came to Mirabelle's mind was more sex. She quickly blushed at the thought and snuggled into his chest again. Oh, are you thinking what I am thinking? He asked, sliding his hands down her body. He already had his morning wood, and so he was already ready. That feels so good, she moaned as he used the pad of his thumb to flick her already aroused nipple. She could barely control herself as she started grinding her body against his, desperate for some sort of friction. All in all, she had a very Merry Christmas. It took a while and one more round, but they finally got out of bed. Breakfast felt much more exciting than it had been the entire year. They sang together as they made eggs and toast, with Jaden stealing a few kisses here and there. You should be a chef, Jaden said as he spooned a forkful of eggs into his mouth. They were both seated at the dining table after they had made a mess of the kitchen. She was putting on his white shirt from the dinner the previous night, and he was putting on only his pants. "It is just eggs," she said. "Well, it is not just eggs. It is magical," Jaden said, raising a forkful into the air, as though it carried some sort of supernatural powers. "Put the food down," she said, laughing at him, and he directed the eggs to her mouth. She did not waste any time in opening the seam of her lips, savoring the taste of the eggs as it passed through their lips. She moaned. Before she knew it, Jaden placed his lips on hers, and she could taste the breakfast that they shared. The kiss was getting deepened and more heated when she heard a throat clear. They both jumped apart immediately. Mirabelle turned and saw her sister, Isabella, standing and looking at her. "Merry Christmas," Isabella said, and Mirabelle stood up to hug her sister, who just moved out of the way and eyed her suspiciously. Mirabelle immediately felt bad, but shrugged it off. "Merry Christmas, sis. How are Richard and the twins?" she asked. "They are fine, and you smell like sex," her sister said. She could hear a choking laughter from Jaden, and Mirabelle wished at that moment that the ground should swallow her. She just kept trying to stretch Jaden's shirt to show that it covered more of her thighs. She was not surprised that her sister could get into the house without knocking, as she had a key of her own, but she had never used it. "Are you not going to introduce me to your friend?" Isabella obviously asked, referring to Jaden. "Oh, I'm Isabella. This is Jaden. Jaden, this is my big sister Isabella," she raised, rushing her words, deliberately not giving Jaden any title. It occurred to her then that though it seemed like she knew him, she did not even know his surname. She made a mental note to ask him later. "Oh, Jaden," Isabella said as she walked up to him and stretched her hand for a handshake. Jaden immediately stood up and took the shake. "Mirabelle has told me so much about you," Isabella said. Mirabelle was pretty sure that the only thing she said about Jaden was that she was going on a date, and her sister also knew that the man would probably still be in her house. She had been so excited when she told her about the date, but she did not expect that she would actually come around. "We are having a Christmas dinner, all of us. I would love to see you there. I am pretty sure our mom and dad would love to see who is making their daughter happy," her sister said to Jaden, who looked like a car, "Who got the cream?" readily nodding. Mirabelle did not know how to take that piece of information. She knew that they were attracted to each other. They were good in bed and also out of it. She expected that they would at least date for a while before he would be so eager to see her parents. It sort of seemed like a good sign to her. But then again, she could not help the sharp pang of guilt that hit her, one that was judging her for moving on so quickly. She had been so caught up in the date and all that she had forgotten that it was getting close to Charlie's death anniversary. She was like that, even till Isabella finally excused her. "What's wrong?" Jaden asked her after her sister had left. She had tried to cover up that she was feeling sad, but it was not easy. She just shook her head at him and started walking to her room. "Is it that you don't want me to go for the Christmas dinner?" "It is fine, really. I know that this is going fast and all," he said, trying to explain, walking behind her as they went into the room. "That is not it," she muttered as she sat down on the bed. She did not know what to say, but she felt like her words would ruin the little bliss that they had. "Can you just leave? I want to be alone," she said, and for the second time, since she knew Jaden, she saw true pain flash in his eyes. She had hurt him bad. "Why?" he asked. His question had shocked her. She half expected that he would immediately get angry and start leaving. That would be much easier for her. She did not expect that he would ask her why. She did not have any explanation to why she wanted him to leave, other than the fact that she was feeling guilty. Am I now a gigolo, a toy to have sex with and throw out? He asked. He was not shouting, but rather his voice was low, but it sounded even more deadly. No, she said, shaking her head. Then why? He asked, but she could not say anything. I just want you to leave, she said. She was not so strong anymore and tears had gathered her eyes, threatening to fall. No, I am not leaving, not anymore, he said and sat down with her, wrapping his arms around her body, holding her tight as the tears that she had forgotten she wanted to shed left her eyes. Jaden did not ask why she was crying, he simply held her. She did not have the strength or the will to fight him, so she let him. You should wear that dress, he said to her, pointing at the red gown that looked like it would blend with her skin. Jaden has been holding Mirabelle since morning, and it had not been too long that he was able to drag her out of bed. He had no idea what triggered the tears and sadness. He intended to find out, but he did not want to hurt her. He did not even know how, but he felt like he was falling in love with her, and there was nothing he could do about it. When she told him to leave, he felt like his world was shattering into pieces, and it did not feel good. He knew there and then that he could not leave her, not anymore. Their lives were completely different, and he was just in New York for the holidays. He had no idea what would happen when it was time for him to go back to work, but that was another problem entirely. He wanted more and more about Mirabelle when he saw her sister. He was actually surprised. They looked nothing like each other. Where Isabella was slim and tall, with a darker shade of melanin, Mirabelle was much more rounded, with her full baby face and much lighter skin. Where Mirabelle let out a calm aura, Isabella's was much more fierce aura. And when she had invited him to dinner, he had readily agreed. He had no idea that it would trigger something else. He held her for hours as she cried and later fell asleep, later making her wake up to eat, and hoping to make her go to dinner. I am not feeling up to it, Jaden, she said. She was still sounding down, but much better than she used to before. Come on, babe, it's Christmas, he whined, pretending to pout, holding her hands all. Okay, fine. But we won't waste too much time. She finally agreed, picking up the red dress and sashaying into the bathroom. Jaden let out a breath that he did not even know he was holding. He was so glad that she agreed. He had talked to his sister and mother earlier in the day. As usual, his sister was asking him to return home, and his mother just wanted to throw a party. The old woman had been throwing all sorts of girls along his way for the past year. She was desperate to get him married to some socialite, but he knew how to deal with her, and she could not force him. She could only suggest. It had been less than a week, but he was already missing his sister, and even if he would not say it out loud, his mother, Greg and Pauline, had also called, half worried really, but he calmed them down, wishing them a Merry Christmas, and told them he was fine. They had asked about Mirabelle, who he said was also fine, not really wanting to bother them. How do I look? Mirabelle asked as she came out of the closet. The red dress was fitted to her skin, caressing her curves as his hands itched too. It was slightly open at the front, showing the creamy flesh of her breasts. She looked so good in the dress that he almost told her to change it. You look marvelous, he said, placing his hands on her hips and kissing her nose. I love your hair, he said, twisting a strand of her kinky hair on his fingers. Thank you, and we should get going, she said. He was already dressed as corporate as he could manage. Pauline had helped him bring some of his clothes. Jaden was more than nervous on the drive to her parents' house. He was very happy when he was invited to the dinner. It never really occurred to him that the nurse would come later. The house was located in a private estate. It was small, but yet classy. He could see Christmas decorations all over the front, making it look much more homey. "Mom," Mirabelle said, hugging the older woman. Jaden saw where Mirabelle got her looks from. Mirabelle looked exactly like her mother, from the shade of their skins to their body makeup, even the button nose. The only difference was their eyes. Where Mirabelle's were a beautiful shade of brown, her mother's were black. "Honey," her mother replied, in a voice that seemed so similar to her mother's. "And who is this fine young man?" she said, and Jaden could not help but smile, his mind feeling very much at ease. "Mom, this is Jaden," Mirabelle said. He could note that she did not add any label. They had not really talked about labels, and so he decided to say something. "I am her boyfriend," he said, stretching his hand to her mother. Mirabelle eyed him, surprise lacing her expression, but she did not say anything to refute his words. Mirabelle's mother seemed very much happy by this proclamation. They went inside and Jaden met her father. Jaden had expected her father to be strict, since her mother was so free, but they were all very free with him. He also met Isabella's husband Richard, and the two children that Mirabelle had carried for 9 months. The twins, Alexia and Adrian, looked very much like their parents, their skin light given to their white father, and their brown hair a bit curly. They both looked adorable. As he looked at them, he could not help but feel more admiration for Mirabelle. The dinner was full of laughter and shared stories. By the end of it all, he knew very well that he could never leave Mirabelle and her family, and that he wanted her to meet him. "I want you to come back to New York with me," Jaden said as the both of them were in the car, going home. The shocked look on Mirabelle's face made him realize that he was way too fast, and that they had not progressed to that level. "I don't know, Jay. We just started seeing each other, and there is still something I want to tell you," she said. "I don't really care about the time frame, and I only go back in the new year. You can make your decision by then," he said. She seemed satisfied by that and nodded her head. "So what is it that you wanted to tell me?" he asked when they got to her place. The question seemed to shake her as she suddenly looked like a deer caught in the headlights. Her expression told him that it had to do with what shook her. "Promise that you will still look at me the same," she begged, and he was shocked. He was even more confused as to what she was going to say. "I promise," he said, and he was truthful about it. There was nothing that she was going to say that would change how he felt about her. "Okay, about 2 years back on New Year's Eve, my boyfriend died. He committed suicide," she began. He had no idea where she was going, but he had not expected that. "I am so sorry," he said. Suicide was a very bad thing that affected people around, and people really needed to know that. "I found him dead in his apartment. We had argued before the incident, and I went to apologize." Tears had begun to rush out of her eyes, though she seemed like she was not in the room anymore. "I don't know. I was still in med school, and I haven't told anyone about him that night. I just drove and drove. I just wanted to get the vision of him lying lifeless in the middle of his living room out of my head. I don't remember much of what happened after then, but I woke up in a hospital." It was as though she just opened her heart, and it was pouring and pouring. Jaden wrapped his hands around her, holding her close. "That night, I almost lost my legs. I was so confused, lost, depressed. I just felt that it was all my fault. Even med school did not feel all right anymore. Nothing felt all right. It took months of physiotherapy to make me walk again, a whole lot of sessions with my psychologist to make me feel sane. And then you came along, looking so much like him. I don't know why, but I feel guilty that I am happy with you. It was out of my guilt that I decided to carry the twins," she said, taking a deep breath. Jaden did not know what to say to that, but he knew that she was very strong. "I'm messed up, aren't I?" she asked, and he looked at her as though she had grown two heads. She was perfect, an angel. She was anything but messed up. Passing through all of that and being able to rise again was a gift, one that he was not so sure that he had. But she did all of that. "You are not messed up, Mirabelle. Don't you ever say that about yourself again. You are perfect. You are beautiful, and I love you, just the way you are." He slipped out. He had no idea why those words left his mouth, but they were true. He had barely even talked about it before he even said it, but he was very sincere. "You love me?" Mirabelle asked, and he nodded. "Will all this broken baggage?" she asked again. He could not help the anger he felt when she demeaned herself, but he nodded. "Then you are a saint," she said, and he couldn't disagree more. "I am not perfect," he said. "You are very close, and even with your stalker tendencies, I think I may love you too," she said. At that point Jaden did not know whether he should laugh or cry, but he was so elated. It was something he had been waiting to hear for more than a year, since the first day he had seen her at the library. Thank you," he said, kissing all over her face, loving the pure smile that graced her lips. "Does that mean you are coming to New York with me?" he asked. "Of course,"